Welcome to this week's episode of Sojourner, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome back to the ongoing series, How Spaces Define Masculinity, a Black and Black-Biracial Men's Initiative. My name is Carol Jean Matthews-Shifflett, and I am the CEO of the Sojourner Group. I'd like to start by thanking my sponsors, the Utah Jazz, Planned Parenthood Association of Utah, Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resource, PCAR, the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault, UCASA, and Enlightened Productions. So today we are centering the voices of two men. Billy Palmer is the co-host, associate producer and director of civic engagement for Radioactive on KRCL in Salt Lake City, Utah. And then we have his formative years were spent here in Salt Lake, in Utah, which surprised me. I thought Billy was not from Utah. And then we have Chris Allen, who's the project manager of LG Harris Technologies. His formative years were spent in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I want to welcome both of you men, Mr. Palmer and Mr. Allen, to today's webinar.
Yes.
And Billy, you said something, you mentioned two words, toxic masculinity and expectation of masculinity. And I think I've said it on these webinars before, I don't like the term toxic masculinity because it just sounds so negative, especially to Black men or men of color.
You saw my air quotes with
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah. And I like the term expectations of masculinity, because although toxic masculinity is saying the same thing, that it's harming men, but it also has a negative connotation that goes with it. So I like that expectation of masculinity much better. So thanks for throwing that word out there. So as we were talking, you talked a little bit about your community. I want to know, what did it mean to be a man for you, Chris, in your community, with your friends in high school, in junior high school? What did it mean for you, we'll start with Chris, to be a man or to prove your manhood? Or was there any difference?
No, because we really didn't in junior high school. It wasn't really. We didn't. None of us really went through that in junior high school. Because the
No
friends
pressure.
the friends that I hung out with, it was pretty much video games, outside playing basketball, football. Uh, I mean, occasionally you shoot BB guns and shoot your neighbor, or or either burn down a tree or something like that. But it wasn't really more. We didn't really have to go through that in junior high school or high school.
So no pressure with
No.
girls, no pressure to date this girl or to see if you can get this girl in the bed.
Now, when we was in high school, you had more of that in high school. It wasn't like that in junior high school. In high school, it was more of that. In high school, it was more of about being popular,
Mm-hmm. Did you feel
being
pressure?
being famous, being popular. Uh,
Did you, let me rephrase that. Did you feel pressured to disrespect girls?
no,
Okay.
no, I didn't.
Is
No.
that because of your upbringing?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And then like a lot of times it was some things that some of my friends did and I didn't do, but and then I realized, and then I found out that the ones that was like, okay, we respect you for not doing certain things, and they still hung around. So that's when I realized these are my true friends. And
Okay.
then there was a lot of times because I have a friend now that we still keep in touch, and it was like, well, no, we not even gonna let him do that.
Okay.
So it was like you feel, so then you kind of weed out the ones that are just doing stuff to do stuff. I mean, because if you follow the crowd, I guess you'll have a lot of friends because you're doing the same thing that they're doing.
So did you ever
But
stop it if you saw it? Did you ever approach a classmate to say that ain't right? Stop it. Don't treat.
in high school, no, I didn't.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, Billy, we will move over on to you with that question. In the community with your peers, and of course, you were probably the only Black man in every school. Am I correct?
Not always, but
Okay.
yeah, very few of us. I
So
mean,
it was three of them now.
yeah. Well, I tell you, we had, I want to start all over, and I want James Allen to be my dad, and I want to grow up in Chris's neighborhood. No, but honestly, you know, there were you had to fight, you had to prove your manhood sometimes, and really, you just had to be willing to. You didn't have to win. You didn't have to, but you had to be a person that wouldn't back down, you know. And I think that test was, in a sense, in a I think everybody wanted to know they were in an environment where if things went down, you were down to, take care of it. And
Okay.
honestly,
Okay.
and even I think the first fight I ever remember being, well, I remember getting beat up a lot when I was young. I didn't like the notion of fighting, and I remember I used to get picked on a lot in my neighborhood, being the only black kid my age, and people would get the other kids my age to fight us, and I eventually went back in the house, beat up, and was told, you got to go back out there and fight next time, or you come
Wow.
home and you get a whooping,
Wow.
and so it was, okay, I get double beat up, so I fought, and then I hurt that poor child so badly because of the fear, uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the anger and rage of just getting beat up all the time. I just took it all out on him, and I was all of 5, 6 years old, and
Wow.
this poor kid barely walked away from it, and from that point on, I was afraid of my own anger, um, and but I grew up knowing that if I act quickly and I act right away, then there's less force on me in the long run. I was the new kid in every class that I went to. We were the new kids in the school every time. My younger brothers were not as physically um, big as me, and so I knew they would get picked on. So I was ready to fight anytime.
Okay.
I didn't love it right off the bat, but I was ready to fight anytime. And then, after you've been in some fights and you get some scrapes and bruises, you tend to, I do, I tend to like the day and the day after that. After like a strong workout, how sometimes those sore muscles that you get,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of miss that. You become a gym rat because of because of the soreness. It was like that with fighting for me. Not that I went out starting fights, but I didn't mind after a while because I knew it'd have to anyways. But
Well, as I say, you had to go home, and
yeah,
it was almost like a fight in the street or a fight at home.
right.
Yeah.
So I was ready. I was ready for it. I was ready for it. I didn't like it. The fear and all that other stuff. But when I would engage, it wasn't a push or a shove, and then I jump in. No, I knew that I needed to show up, and show up
Wow.
big, and become much bigger, much stronger, much harder, and willing to do whatever. I wanted that to resonate. I wanted that to be a ripple. The first fight I got into every single school, almost every school, it was prove your toughness, because I went to a lot of schools that had that environment. It was, and then for me it was take this kid out, and
Wow.
I almost felt bad for any kid that got put in that situation with me, because I knew they wouldn't be ready for it. I knew I had done it so often. I'd had to be in that environment so often that I knew what worked and what didn't. And so I would go all out, and that kid would never know what happened to him, what hit him, because it went from a shove to now I'm all over the top of you, right? I don't shove. I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to talk trash. When you get in my face and when you force it on me, well, then you're going to get all of it all at once. And that's how I grew up,
Wow.
and that's how you handled things. And that was always rewarded with within my community of people that saw it, or the people that I knew. Like, you got into a fight. How did it turn out? I whooped his ass. You know what I mean? Like, and that was celebrated. It
Yeah,
wasn't like, you poor thing, you got into a fight, what happened? No, it was, what happened? Did you win? You know?
yeah. You
So,
had no choice.
no.
And see, with us, it was more of a, you didn't go look for a fight, but you didn't want to be bullied. So it's kind of like if somebody is messing with you or picking on you, then you defend yourself and then you fight. And most times once you do that, then y'all become friends, or they don't pick on you anymore because they're like, okay, well, there's somebody I can't really pick on. And you might not win the fight, but at least they know, okay, if I keep picking on this person, they're gonna fight me.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think that's a general rule. But when that would happen with me, I wanted to make sure that they knew they don't mess with me, they don't mess with my two brothers, they don't mess with my sisters, they don't mess with any of us. You know, that I wanted to make sure that message is sent, because that was the risk. That was the risk. Is if he's a sissy, then his brothers are probably a sissy, and now
Yeah.
we gotta go test their mettle too. You know what I mean? I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure the entire school knew that one of the worst people to ever touch or be near in a fight was me, because that would make sure. And my brothers grew up with in a very different environment where they didn't have to fight very often, because they had a brother that was known to be, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody was afraid of you. So you were made out to be the bad one in the family. Billy's the tough guy. He's the one you don't mess with. That's to me, that's horrible, but you got out of it. You started therapy, which this is healthy masculinity is all about.
right.
One of my friends, I think he's on this call, said every Black man in America needs therapy. And
Oh, yes.
you agree?
Well, like James Baldwin's quote, I can't quote it exactly probably, but to be Black in America is to be enraged all of the time. You live with a sense of pain, trauma, rage, protectiveness, all of those things, because somebody that looks like you today is going to get stopped by a police officer or harassed or any one of those things and may end up dead. And it may be you one day. You know what I mean? And I think about that about my children. So you got to figure out how. I really believe that if there's anything I could say today to try to influence anybody in a positive direction, it would be exactly that get somebody that you can talk to, that you can work your feelings through, because whether we like it or not, the environment we grew up in is your masculinity means prove your worth, prove your toughness, prove all those things. And that is not the way through everything. Sometimes it is, sometimes it ain't.
Stay tuned for the next episode on how spaces define masculinity, a Black and Black biracial men's initiative.